Hello and welcome to the show. Today is April 22nd, 2023. It is a Saturday. Let me start by saying I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This information is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. Today we'll be talking about stock symbol MMTLP, or what used to be stock symbol MMTLP, what is now the private company NextBridge Hydrocarbons, which I am abbreviating with the symbols, with the letters NBH. And this video is about a couple of days after Gary Gensler, the SEC chair, appeared before Congress. Last video I made was just a day before he was to appear before Congress. This is the result and what happened afterwards. Okay. So before I start with that, we know that the SEC likes to oversee the securities that are traded in the United States. They often have important messages. Here is a message that I thought was important. They tweeted this out. Let's hear what they have to say. This is a recent message they sent out to all investors. Let's see what they have to say.
Don't give your money to a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Background check.
Before you invest, investor.gov.
So, well, it turns out that I, unfortunately, gave my money to some market makers who naked shorted my MMTLP shares. They drove the price down from $12.50 all the way down to $2.90. A lot of people would call that price manipulation. These naked shorts, they were market makers. They were assisted by FINRA, who pulled a U3 halt, which would prevent the short shares from ever being reconciled. Okay, these actions, these manipulative actions were condoned by the SEC, I believe, because it was discovered that there were, or at least I discovered, there were thousands and thousands of complaints lodged with the SEC regarding the manipulative short selling and FINRA's U3 halt of MMTLP. I understand that FINRA reports to the SEC, but the SEC has disregarded all everything, basically. I also understand that MMTLP investors even went to the SEC, right? We went to SEC headquarters in Washington, D.C. so that the SEC might take notice. But the SEC had no comment. What does that mean? Does that mean that the SEC and FINRA just don't care about protecting investors? I don't know. But it's been over 125 days since this happened on December 9th of 2022. And MMTLP and NextBridge Hydrocarbon shareholders have been fleeced by FINRA and the short market makers, with all to benefit these short hedge funds and buddies of FINRA. So FINRA might have been trying to help out their buddies, but that's the case. So hedge funds, short hedge funds, market makers, they had 6 months to close their short positions in MMTLP before NextBridge Hydrocarbons was spun out to a private company. Now, it looks like FINRA conspired with them to keep the short position open and create a situation where there are short positions in a private company. So basically, there were some preferred shares. These are Series A preferred shares, which was trading in the OTC markets, and they represented ownership in some oil and gas assets, land in West Texas, basically oil and gas land in West Texas. They traded under a stock symbol MMTLP. Hedge funds were given 6 months of warning to spin out these assets were going to be spun out into a private company. And as the public filings took place with the SEC, we see that there are now short positions in a private company. Now, before I go on, you may not know what a short position is. A short position means that a security is sold before it was purchased, right? The seller intends to buy back the shares later when the price is lower. Short sellers sell something they do not own, and this creates dilution. This dilution depresses share prices until the shares are purchased, okay? So when I say there are short positions in a private company, this means the private company shares have now been counterfeited, okay? What do I mean? You can't sell something you don't own in a private company. You can't owe a debt of shares in a private company because there were no shares to borrow. You got to close out your position if it's a private company. It's a fact. How do I know that there's a short position in a private company? Because FINRA said so in their FAQ. They verified the existence of short positions in the private company. And basically they said, hey, look, we got no choice. We got to do this. FINRA pulled a U3 extraordinary event halt, and they halted the trading before the shorts would be able to close their positions. They said they needed to do this for a variety of reasons. The reasons had to do with settlement times, but The end result was they created fraudulent counterfeit shares by pulling the U3 halt. A lot of people, 65,000 plus shareholders, and had a lot of questions about this. There are 3 active lawsuits right now against FINRA, possibly more at this point in time. There's an investigation that's being funded by Flamethrower LLC. Even Congress started to look into this. So what happened? FINRA wrote an FAQ. But here's what FINRA should have done. They should have instructed broker-dealers of a corporate action that shorts must close their positions. And when a short closes his position, he buys to close because they already sold the shares. They have to buy to close by December 12th, 2022. They should have informed broker-dealers that on December 9th to 12th, all trading of MMTLP must be position close only. What that means is that longs, people who've already purchased the shares, they can sell the shares that they've already purchased to shorts. Shorts can close their positions by actually buying the shares because they've already sold their shares a long time ago. They need to buy to close, and they can do so before December 12th, 2022. This would reconcile all the shares. Reconciliation means that the shorts would close their positions. There would no longer be fraudulent counterfeit shares. This would reconcile the shares which were already sold to buyers, but they were never originally purchased. That would prevent these short shares from becoming fraudulent counterfeit shares. FINRA, you should have done that, but you didn't. Instead, you pulled a U3 halt. Now, it looks like, because we've seen a FOIA request, it looks like FINRA conspired with short hedge funds to keep the short position open into the spin out of a private company. Now, there are short positions in a private company. Don't forget, short positions in a private company are equal to fraudulent counterfeit shares because they sold something without ever owning it. Okay? Now, FINRA is a self-regulatory agency. It's empowered by Congress. It reports to the SEC. They state that their goal is to provide a resource for investors to feel confident about investing in U.S. financial markets. But instead, it looks like they worked with particular hedge funds to enable the counterfeiting of U.S. stocks and to fleece investors. Okay, it looks like that's what they did. The situation now with FINRA's U3 halt and MMTLP and the resulting short position in the private company NextBridge Hydrocarbon shares has gone on for over 125 days without resolution. Don't forget, a short position in a private company equals counterfeit shares. This is a clear example of how corrupt U.S. markets are, okay? FINRA's U3 halt fleeced 65,000 plus shareholders of MMTLP, all to benefit a few short hedge funds and market makers. Until this situation is resolved, I think it's a clear example of corruption in U.S. markets. It's corruption by regulators, okay? And it harms the entire U.S. market. Those are my opinions, of course. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This information is, of course, intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. Toward that end, we saw that on Tuesday, there was a meeting held by Congress to talk to Gary Gensler, the head of the SEC, and don't forget the SEC oversees FINRA. We thought that some Congress people might be talking to Gary Gensler about MMTLP and the short positions in the private company, which are, of course, illegal. But we got nothing. There was not a single mention of MMTLP during the entire 5 hours of questions to Gary Gensler. We saw this question, however, by Pete Sessions. Let me see if I can play it.
If you had a counsel who was of extreme confidence, then the Bureau would deal with you even on the most sensitive issues. I will tell you that one of the clients that I referred to you has extremely important and valuable confidence in their counsel. And you as an agency have chosen to stonewall, obfuscate, and not do your job. And I've sent you a letter, and I'm asking you to respond back to this committee and to me about whether you're going to look at that when confronted by this committee, because I strenuously believe that you should have some authority and responsibility in that effort. Mr. Chairman, I yield back my time.
So, okay. Now, if you're like me, you'll say, gee, it's hard to tell exactly what Pete Sessions is talking about here. Okay? It's really hard to tell. And that says something because Pete Sessions is a politician. A politician, by definition, is a master communication, right? They have to be. That's how they get their jobs. It's how they keep their jobs. They have to communicate with the public. They can communicate better than anybody else on the planet because frickin' their job depends on it. But Pete Sessions is not very clear here. And I figured it was likely by choice. I figured he was trying to send some sort of message to FINRA. He used the words stonewall, obfuscate, and not do your job. These are some terms that a lot of people in the MMTLP community use when they talk about FINRA, right? So the question is he talking about MMTLP? I thought he was, right? And he said, you should have some responsibility and authority in that effort. He's talking to the SEC to tell FINRA what to do, right? And he mentioned, that he'd like to see, so he mentioned a letter, right, that he sent to the SEC. So I kind of figured, okay, maybe this letter is MMTLP related. It's the only thing that's possible, right? So I'd like to see what this letter was that was being referenced, right? And I thought it would appear in the congressional record the following day. So I looked in the congressional record. Here it is. Here's where I looked. You know what? Didn't see a damn thing. Looked in the House section, but I did see this part in the Daily Digest of the congressional record. It says that, there's going to be an oversight of the Securities and Exchange Commission with Gary Gensler. Okay, so, we know this is a correct congressional record. Didn't see a damn thing about it. Nowhere in this congressional record does it say anything about it. I looked in the Financial Services Committee, which is hosting this particular oversight, right, of the SEC. Didn't see anything there. Upon further investigation at the Financial Services Committee, I did see a bunch of letters, right? It says committee Republicans are holding Chair Gensler's SEC accountable, and they have a bunch of letters. In fact, they have 6 letters that are noted. Not a single one is from Pete Sessions. Not a single one is about the Pete Sessions letter. That is not present in there. Didn't know what that was, so I figured, okay, maybe he's trying to send some sort of coded message at the SEC to resolve this. So I said, hey, look, can you, I looked all over the place, can you provide this information to the Financial Services GOP? What's with this letter here? Right? Okay. Here's a video clip of what he's referring to. Can you provide this information? And you know what? I didn't hear a damn thing. Turns out that I was wrong. WRONG, wrong. Tony was wrong. I thought this letter was about MMTLP. I thought Pete Sessions was sending a secret message to Gary Gensler. He was not. He was talking about a totally different company. The company was called Rapid Therapeutics Laboratories. I'm the first guy to admit when I'm wrong, and I was wrong here. What WTF happened that it sounded on from the previous day that Congress was going to talk to Gary Gensler about MMTLP and Nextbridge Hydrocarbons. What happened? Turns out this happened. There's a guy called James Angel. Liz from Wisconsin says basically, hey, look, I was informed by my congressman's office that this professor gave a briefing to many congressional staffers by one of our leading congressmen in the MMTLP saga. And by that, I believe that to be Pete Sessions' office. Anyway, said to believe that this professor is also a fellow shareholder. I do not believe it is, because when I look at what his comments are, it shows that he is completely clueless. So therefore, I'm saying he's not a shareholder, because no shareholder is going to be that clueless. Here's what James Angel had to say in a tweet that summarized his position. He says, it's not FINRA's fault. They had no choice. My prime suspect is the management who engineered a security design not to be traded. In order for security to be tradable, it has to be registered by the DTCC. Ask management why it hasn't done so. Hashtag MMTLP. You know what, James Angel? I don't think you're a shareholder, because that's a completely ludicrous statement for you to make. You know why? Because it was known for 6 months that the reason that that the security was not meant to be tradable is because the security was meant to go private. Private! Sorry, James Angel. You completely missed the boat. So, anyway, that's beside the point. This shows that this question or this statement and how James J. Angel puts it, it clearly shows what FINRA wants, what the OTC markets want. And by OTC markets, I mean Cromwell Coulson, because he made some tweets about this. And I believe it shows what short market makers want, like GTS and Canaccord. They want the shares to trade openly and resume their short position. They want the shares to trade forever. They have a short position in Nextbridge Hydrocarbons. They want to maintain that. They never want to frickin' close their short position. In fact, they probably want to add to it. And I believe they're shorted more than 100% of all the shares. But I'm not the only person who thinks that, of course, right? We see this tweet from John Berta. It says, James, are you available for a Spaces call? We want to know the following. Did you speak to Congress? We think you did. Did you disclose your relationships with market makers, including Ari's firm? Ari's firm is, of course, GTS. Are any other market participants in there? What was your solution that you'd pitched that needed to be done? Did you have a solution? Or are you just agreeing with FINRA? Have you changed your tune at all now that you've likely seen the blue sheets? Have you seen the blue sheets? I don't think he has. I think he's just who knows? I don't know. Maybe he has seen the blue sheets. Why would you blame management for not wanting a dividend to trade when all the shareholders were notified of that request and voted in favor of it? This was done 6 months ago. Geez, are you clueless? And he asked for some further questions. Okay, it's fine. Now, the question comes up, right? So I personally think that James Angel's briefing ahead of the Congressional Oversight Committee meeting with the SEC chair, Gary Gensler, which was supposed to happen the other day, it resulted in an MMTLP not being mentioned during that 5-hour session before Congress. Now, the question comes up, is James Angel incompetent or is he corrupt? Or a bit of both? I don't know. The question I have is, so the reason I say is he incompetent is because he clearly doesn't understand. So from these tweets and all this, it says to me that he clearly does not understand the MMTLP situation, right? So he's not an expert in this matter, for sure. The question is, did anyone pay him? Who paid him, right? And why do you think whoever paid him is so afraid of Congress asking Gary Gensler about MMTLP? Why do you think that? I think it's because it's not a question he wants to answer when he's taken an oath to answer truthfully. It's not something he wants to answer. Okay? Now, Drew Diligence, Free Commercials, wrote this tweet out. It's pretty cool. Check it out. He says, this is a full letter that was sent to Pete Sessions regarding James J. Angel. Just the bottom line is simple. If there was no wrongdoing, all they have to do is release the blue sheets. Anyone who argues against this idea is hiding something. It's an excellent response. I strongly recommend that you read it and check out the letter. Great job. Great job. The MMTLP community is freaking amazing. So thank you to everyone out there. So I recently found out that it was not about. So when I found out that it was not about MMTLP, I said, hey, look, it's not about MMTLP. Just want to let you guys know. It's about this other thing called Rapid Therapeutics Laboratories. And Jeff Irons responded back to me, you have James Angel to thank. Okay. And I said, oh, James Angel, maybe the people who paid him, right? Is it incompetence? Is it corruption? What is it? Is it a bit of both? I'm thinking it's corruption is what I'm saying, right? At that time, because why would he send out if it was incompetence, you just send out a tweet, you're wrong. Hey, look, I made a mistake. I thought that Pete Sessions was talking about MMTLP, but hey, I was wrong, and I'm willing to admit it. So, James Angel, if you're wrong, I'm sure that if you have any integrity, you're willing to admit it too. Is it corruption? Maybe. I'm thinking if you're not willing to admit it and you're digging your heels in, it's frickin' corruption. Maybe it's a bit of both. Who knows? Maybe you're incompetently corrupt. I don't know. Anyway, Jeff Irons further goes on and says, Sessions' main advisor Tucker was served a huge glass of James Angel Kool-Aid and convinced Sessions that metamaterials and not the SEC was to blame. I can't really blame Pete Sessions because he's a congressman and he's got a billion things on his mind and he's not going to be an expert in markets. And so when he's served a glass of James Angel, who's supposedly an expert in the matter, he's probably going to believe him. And James Angel's probably just read the FINRA FAQ to Pete Sessions. Says, hey, look, FINRA wrote an FAQ about it. Just read the FAQ. It's that simple. Well, it's not. Anyway, JRock149 says, good afternoon, Jeff. I'm just seeing this tweet. Is there any validity behind this claim? Yes. Yes. Sessions' office organized a gathering of 18 congressperson staff and had James Angel give them a briefing shortly before the congressional hearings. Tucker is Sessions' main aide. So we have intel, and I have no reason to doubt this intel. I have no reason to doubt Jeff Irons right now. I think this is what happened. But all is not lost. Thank you to Anatrades. Thank you to William P. Ferrand, because these guys were in D.C. These guys were in the Capitol building. these guys cornered Gary Gensler, and they asked him some questions. And what questions did they ask him? They asked him a whole bunch of questions about MMTLP, and his response was that he's 100% aware of the situation regarding MMTLP. 100% aware. That's the only thing he had to say about it. He didn't say anything else. What does it mean when that's the only thing that you have to say? That means you're not willing to say anything else, okay? So based on that single answer, the question is the SEC actually working behind the scenes to get the MMTLP situation resolved? I do not know, but they are certainly 100% aware of it. I would think that if he's quiet about it, that he's doing something. I mean, who knows? He could be doing nothing, but let's hope that he's doing something. It's been 125 frickin' days. Is he doing nothing? Let's see. If he's 100%, if he says he's 100% aware, there's an implication that he's doing something about it, or he's planning to do something, or he's trying to get the situation fixed. So let's work on that assumption for now, okay? So big shout out and thanks to Anna, Queen of Trades, for talking to Gary Gensler. I can't say thank you more than that. It's impossible for me to say thank you enough. Big shout out to William P. Ferrand for actually sharing this tweet, okay? William P. Ferrand has been talking about GTII and also MMTLP. So thank you, William P. Ferrand. Thank you, Anna, Queen of Trades, for going to Congress, for walking the halls in Congress. You've been doing this for several days, and thank you so much. And basically, Anna had this to say. She said, the sun was shining brightly on the Capitol today. For 5 full days, we walked the halls in Congress. We've gone to every member's office on the House Financial Services Committee and many on the Oversight Committee. Thank you to those that joined. So, thank you to Anna. Thank you to Anna Trades. So, what did we learn from all of this? We learned that Congress did not ask any direct questions of MMTLP. I was wrong, and I am proud to tell you that I was wrong about that. But I thought they were going to. Anyway, but we did know that congressional members were 100% aware of the situation, right? But they were given misinformation or disinformation later on by James J. Angel. So congressional members were aware of the situation. They informed their shareholders they would be asking Gary Gensler about MMTLP. Congress was briefed about MMTLP by this James J. Angel. He had clearly no understanding of the situation, or he was deliberately misleading one or the other. Anyway, the question is, why did this academic suddenly decide to brief Congress? Who paid him, right? Was he paid for by FINRA or short market makers? Could be. We don't know. Anyway, is it just incompetence or is it corruption? Anyway, are the people behind this briefing scared of a congressional question about MMTLP going to the chairman of the SEC, right? Because I don't think he wants to answer that question. I don't think he wants to say anything about it because he didn't say a damn thing about it to Anna Queen of Trades. Okay, Congress was going to ask about the blue sheets because the blue sheets came out in a FOIA document, right? Now, was someone afraid of what the blue sheets would reveal? We don't know. We don't know. I suspect so because we haven't seen the blue sheets yet. Okay, Gary Gensler, we know, is 100% aware of the MMTLP situation because he said so. So he knows what the short position in MMTLP is. That's what I'm thinking. He's seen the blue sheets. Now we have this tweet by Brian Jones. He says, I'm not invested in this stock, but it's important to note that the manipulation is rampant in the markets. As a financial professional, I can't believe the regulators haven't stopped the crime yet. It makes me think it's too big, so they don't know what to do. If market makers or hedge funds broke the law, they should be forced to buy all the synthetic shares out on the open market and then be criminally prosecuted. Okay? Other countries would never put up with this, but I guess this is American exceptionalism nowadays. Other countries would not put up with this. Let's just look and see what other countries are doing right now. This is a scene of what's going on in Paris, France. Apparently, protesters have invaded Euronext, the Paris Stock Exchange, after anger against Macron's pension reform. Macron is, of course, the prime minister, I believe, of France. And this is what's going on in Paris. Okay, this is the Paris Stock Exchange. In America, we seem to want to burn down our poor neighborhoods, but in Paris, they decide that, hey, look, they're going to go after the people who are causing problems. And they went to Euronext, the Paris Stock Exchange. This is a scene from there. I'm not going to go into that in detail. This is from Luc Afroot. Thank you. And of course, there are 221,000 views of this. Let's see what Bird Lady has been up to. Okay. We know that Bird Lady has been asking for FOIA requests, particularly of the blue sheets. This is the first FOIA request that she did. She made a video about it, he says. And she said, hey, look, I'd like to make a video about FOIA requests for blue sheets because we know blue sheets exist now. We know that they exist. Let's get them. Okay. So good job, Bird Lady. She put in a FOIA request for the blue sheets. We'll see what happens to them. Then I was talking to Bird Lady a little bit later on, and I asked, hey, look, how come we haven't seen anything about this S1 filing that took place with NextBridge Hydrocarbons a while back? They had 40 million shares that they filed to sell to, I believe, to accredited investors or something like that. 40 million shares, okay? And we haven't heard anything about them. All we heard is that the filing was started, and then the filing was pulled. The filing was pulled to give the SEC time to comment. That was the reason that was given, right? So I asked, hey, can you see if you can do a FOIA request on that? And she said, yeah, let's do that. That sounds like a pretty darn good idea. So she sent a FOIA request to NextBridge about the S1. And basically, is there an S1 comment letter? So the question comes up. We haven't heard anything about from NextBridge Hydrocarbons. So we wouldn't see the comment letter normally that's delivered from the SEC to NextBridge Hydrocarbons. Normally, what would happen is the SEC would deliver a comment letter to NextBridge about what they need to fix in their S1 filing, and then move on. Then NextBridge would amend, make the changes suggested, give it back to the SEC. Okay, that's what we've seen before. In this case, it should be a lot simpler because it's a private company, right? And it's only going to be sold to accredited investors. Those are investors who are intelligent enough and able to take on risk, right? Because they have enough funds, and they're considered to be accredited investors. Okay, accredited. Now, basically, they have to have $2 million more. Anyway, so it's not for sale to the general public, only to accredited investors. But we have not seen anything back from that original S1 filing. It has been months. So I said, hey, look, maybe SEC is stalling this. And the Bird Lady said, hey, maybe they're not stalling it. Maybe they sent a comment letter to NextBridge. For all we know, they sent one, and maybe NextBridge is stalling it. I said, okay, fine. Look for, let's do a FOIA for that S1, right? S1 for the comment letter for the S1. Okay, so she did that. Thank you to Bird Lady Roller Pigeons. I'll be getting back to this a little bit later on. But so these are 2 FOIA requests that she sent out. So the question that I have is, I'd been thinking about this whole thing with about what's going to happen, how's this going to play out, and the big question comes up is, how big is the short position, right? And Gray Tendo also he's been hosting spaces, and he thinks that the S1 is a key, right? He thinks that the S1 could be the reason for he thinks that it's the key behind everything. But the whole thing behind the S1 is, the question comes up, how many shares are short there, right? So I had an infographic on my Twitter space that describes the situation. I believe that there's about 480 million to 500 million shares of MMTLP out there. That means shares that are held by shareholders. Only 165 million shares have been issued. So if basically that means that there's about 312 million short shares out there, right? So those are the shares that would need to be resolved. And quite frankly, if I'm right, then this whole thing could be resolved possibly with NextBridge Hydrocarbons selling shares, okay? So they can sell up to 320 million shares, right? And potentially, if the number of shares is, if the number of shares out there is under 500 million, then it could possibly be resolved by them selling shares. Granted, there's a lot of dilution, right? And they would who would they be selling shares to? They would be selling shares to the shorts, right? To close out the short position. They would be selling them at extraordinary prices, of course, because you don't need to sell them for dirt cheap prices. Anyway, the question comes up: they filed an S1 filing for 40 million shares. I personally did not think 40 million shares is enough. I think that could be the reason why the SEC is holding up the S1 approval. Okay. The DTCC certainly knows how many short shares are there out there, because they've seen the blue sheets along with FINRA. They know what the share allocation is. They know how many short shares are out there. Is the SEC working behind the scenes to try to resolve this, right? And if so, they probably want to have the option open to try to have NextBridge Hydrocarbons issue shares if need be. Okay. And that could be the reason why the S1 has not been released yet for those 40 million shares. Could be, who knows, right? So that is one possibility. And so I'm going to leave it there at that for now. Further, we know that we've got FOIA, we got some info from FOIA requests. There's one other piece of information that I'd like to see, we have an idea of, but we don't have the actual data, is let's see if we can get some FOIA requests, possibly for the DTCC allocations, right, to the broker-dealers. How many shares are actually allocated to the broker-dealers? That has to add up to 165 million shares, because that's the number of shares that was issued. So I said, hey, has anyone asked a FOIA about that? I got a response from CPR EMS is getting paid, and basically says, hey, DTC is FOIA exempt. And that's true. They're a private company, so they don't have to, they don't have to answer FOIA questions. And I said, yeah, but maybe the DTCC sent some, emails to the SEC. Who knows? Maybe we can do that. So he says, yeah, hey, everything would have to go through the SEC. They're the only agency with FOIA requirements. So the SEC, if the SEC emailed FINRA and DTCC, then, they could get some info about that. And then Pops comes along and says, hey, I requested all communications between DTCC, FINRA, and the SEC. That's a very broad range of requests, right? Anyway, CPR EMS is getting paid, says, hey, FOIA request is sent. And I said, thank you. So possibly we could see some FOIA data about what the share allocations is for the broker-dealers. That would be very nice. That would be the final piece of the puzzle. Along the way on Friday, or on Thursday, I believe, we see this from Roza Tawil. Special thanks to Mike Alex 543 for his help in authenticating the necessary documents and being so efficient and quick in the process. Drew Diligence says, hey, you can get the newest Roza Tawil filing at the following link. There you go. She filed an amendment. Our attorneys in the community are brilliant and bright. This is the amendment that she filed. Thank you very much, Drew Diligence, for posting her filing. You can download it at this link over here. Check out Drew Diligence's tweet, and you can get the link to download it. I did, of course, and I read it. Basically, she updates her file. She does a terrific job. Great job, Roza Tawil. You did a great job. I personally think you did a great job. Anyway, she basically got the FOIA document about the smoking gun material, which shows that FINRA requested the blue sheets. They knew about the MMTLP situation a while back, and they were investigating up to a year ago before they pulled any U3 halt crap. So what did she do? She got the FOIA document notarized. Okay, this is now an official document. It's gone into a court filing, and she updated some other things. She also wrote in the court filing, hey, look, more than 125 days have passed, whatever. And along the way, she says, AST, this is the transfer agent, American Stock Transfer, has indicated to the plaintiff, to Roza, that brokerages have made requests in excess of 200 million shares, while only 165 million shares were authenticated in the prospectus of NextBridge Hydrocarbons. Only 165 million shares were issued. However, AST has indicated that brokerages have made requests in excess of 200 million shares. That's a friggin' big short position there, right then and there. I am not going to go over Roza Tawil's amendment, because you can watch this guy's video, Houston Wade. He has gone over Roza Tawil's amendment in detail. I'm going to refer you to this video. Links will be provided, of course, and he will provide you details of that. So there's no sense watching me go over the same stuff that Houston will go over. So check that out. So there are 3 lawsuits out there. We got some smoking gun evidence, in terms of this FOIA document that came out there. FINRA is aware of the MMTLP situation. The SEC is aware of the MMTLP situation. In fact, they were in communication with FINRA for over a year. The blue sheets, which have all the trading data, is available FINRA has them. The SEC saw them. Okay. So we know that. We know that there are short positions in a private company, Nexbridge Hydrocarbons, because FINRA said so in their FAQ. Nexbridge Hydrocarbon shares are not publicly tradable. Therefore, it's impossible to perform a locate. Therefore, those are fraudulent counterfeit shares. The short positions were allowed to come into existence by FINRA. So the question comes up, is there a possible collusion with FINRA and the shorts? Timing would suggest that FINRA disclosed non-public information to shorts. And basically, the idea is that FINRA would perform, FINRA basically would perform a U3 halt. The short shares would be allowed to go into a private company, Nexbridge Hydrocarbons, and that information was disclosed to the shorts, but not to the general public. That is illegal. That is illegal. And FINRA may have engaged in that activity. FINRA was informed about the issue. However, they defended their position because FINRA's ombudsman's office hangs up on people if you ask them about MMTLP. FINRA's ombudsman's office does not want to talk to you. Does that sound like something that an innocent party would do? FINRA is supposed to be a regulator, but they're not acting as a regulator. Instead, they appear to be acting as a manipulator. So the natural question that comes up is, should FINRA be dissolved? They're not acting as a regulator. They're acting as a friggin' manipulator. Okay? But Friday, we see something really interesting happen. This happened on Friday. This changed the entire friggin' world for me. Okay? The Form 8K was filed by the SEC by Nexbridge Hydrocarbons. This is April 18th. This came out. Okay. 2023. Looks like McCabe swapped his 22.6249% working interest in the Oro Grande project for 56 million shares of Nexbridge Hydrocarbon stock. You can look this up yourself in the Form 8K. If the shorts wanted to buy shares from And I tweeted out, if the shorts wanted to buy shares from Nexbridge Hydrocarbons, there's fewer and fewer shares available. And I did some simple math. Okay, there's 500 million shares that were originally authorized. So theoretically, there's 500 million shares that Nexbridge could possibly sell to shorts to resolve the situation. Do they have to? No. Can they charge an exorbitant amount of money if they sell it to shorts? Yeah, if they want to. It's their shares. They charge whatever they want. Okay. Now, as of March 31st, 2023, on the 10K, there were 165 million shares that were issued. These additional shares, these additional 56 million shares are going to Greg McCabe, okay, in exchange for 22.6249% working interest in Oro Grande. They're getting a bigger slice of the Oro Grande project pie. That means in total now, there would be 221 million shares outstanding, as per the 8K. That means that if Nexbridge Hydrocarbons ever wanted to help the shorts to close their positions by selling them shares at a possibly outrageous price, they can only sell 278 million shares at this point in time. Okay? They can only sell 278 million shares at the time. Now, along the way, I happen to be on some private chat groups and all that, and some people got confused, and some people started asking some strange questions. One of the questions they asked is, hey, is there dilution? I think this question comes from someone who was trying to introduce FUD into this situation. I don't know. But some people thought, hey, look, we got more shares now. Is this dilution? There is no dilution here, because this is the way that this whole thing worked is that there are Series A preferred shares which represented in total, all of the shares that were issued represented in total about a 49% interest in the Oro Grande project. The rest of the interest of the Oro Grande project is held by Greg McCabe and by University Lands. Okay? Now, in this case, Nexbridge Hydrocarbons had about a 50% interest previously. Now they're adding a 22% interest, which is the interest by McCabe, in exchange for 56 million shares. Okay? The interest in the Oro Grande project remains about the same, so there's really no dilution. Okay, you got additional shares, but you got a commensurate increase in the interest of the Oro Grande project. Okay, now that was a lot of words and arm waving. I'm going to give you the math here. Okay, simple. There are 165 million shares originally. This represented 49% of the Oro Grande project. Okay, Now, if you look at the percentage per million shares, that means that there was about 0.296% represented for every million shares. Okay. Now, if you look at these additional 56 million shares, this additional 56 million shares is being sold for 22%, 22.6249% precisely. Now, the percentage per million shares in this case is 0.404% per million shares. So this is actually being charged more in a percentage per million shares. What that basically means is that Greg McCabe is actually giving you more percentage of the Oro Grande project per million shares than what was already there. Okay. So he's effectively donating some shares to you. The final result is, of course, 221.8 million shares, and NextBridge Hydrocarbons will have 71%, about 72% of the Oro Grande project. And the percentage per million shares, the percentage of the Oro Grande project for every million shares has actually gone up. It's gone up to 0.323%. That means this is a non-dilutive event. In fact, it's the reverse of that. I call it undilutive. Call it whatever you want. But the percentage of shares per million shares has actually gone up. McCabe is effectively giving shareholders a present of additional ownership per share. Okay? Non-dilutive. Non-dilutive. So anyone who tells you this is dilution, they're smoking something. Who knows? Anyway, so the other question comes up. How many short shares are there? How does this affect how many shares there are in terms of shorts? Okay, the total number of shares held by longs, I was estimating, based upon this calculation, is somewhere in the range of 478 million shares. Okay, there were 165 million shares that were issued by the company. That means that there's about a 313 million share short position, right? Shorts need to close this by buying the shares because they sold the shares already. The shares didn't exist. They just sold them. Now, the question comes up, where are they going to buy these shares from? They have to buy them from individuals who are willing to sell them, or could they get them from the company, right? The company, don't forget, they authorized up to 500 million shares. Theoretically, they could go to the company, strong arm them, coerce them, who knows what, to try to get 313 million shares. But now the company doesn't have 313 million shares. The company only has 278 million shares. Even if you strong armed the company doesn't have enough shares to actually close this entire short position, right? That means if someone went to the company and said, you gotta issue shares in order for the shorts to close their positions, it doesn't matter what the price is. The company can charge whatever price they want. But if they try to tell the company to issue shares to close the short position, there's not enough shares. There's only 278 million shares the company could ever provide. Okay, so if the shorts wanted to buy shares from NextBridge Hydrocarbons to close their position, there's not enough shares. Not from NextBridge, at least. Okay, so what does this mean? This means the situation is now worse for shorts than it has ever been. Okay, and this is not a surprise for shorts. Shorts were warned of this. They knew the situation in December of 2022 because NextBridge filed an S1 to that they were going to actually do this swap with McCabe in order to get a larger percentage of the Oro Grande Basin project. So they did the swap. Now there's fewer shares the shorts can buy to close. In essence, the price just went up. Okay, that's what I mean by this, and I did tweet about this. Now, that's all I was originally going to say in this video, but we see that Bird Lady, remember I told you that Bird Lady did this FOIA stuff and all that? Well, she made a video. She made a video today, and I recommend you watch the video in full, of course. I'm just going to play a really quick clip from this video.
Yesterday, I got a response that said, no, you may not see the comment letter. You can look at it now. The SEC response to my FOIA reads as the following. Dear Bird Lady, this letter is in response to your request dated April 14th, 2023. And received in the office on the 17th, 2023. So it didn't take very long to get back to me. For information regarding comments on the Form S1 filed by Nextbridge Hydrocarbons from January 23rd through April 14th, 2023. After conducting a search, we determined to withhold correspondence that may be responsive to your request because the registration is pending. The correspondence is being withheld under 5 USC section 552 subset B subset 4 since it contains confidential commercial or financial information that is protected from release under Exemption 4. Please be advised that we have considered the foreseeable harm standard in preparing this response. I'm not sure what that means. I'm the deciding official with this regard to this adverse determination. You have the right to appeal it.
So we see that they said no, so that's fine. But let's look at the reason behind why they said no, okay? Please be advised that we have considered the foreseeable harm standard in preparing this response. Foreseeable harm? Harm to Nextbridge Hydrocarbons? I don't think so. Nextbridge Hydrocarbons filed the S1. They want to release some shares, 40 million shares, right? That's what this S1 filing was all about. So it's probably not harm to Nextbridge Hydrocarbons because this is just looking for what the comments that the SEC had to Nextbridge Hydrocarbons. You know, just fix this problem, and then, you know, you can issue your shares. No. So I don't believe this is harm to Nextbridge Hydrocarbons. Could this be harm to shorts, market makers, brokers, broker-dealers? How many shorts are there? What kind of harm are we talking about here, okay? We know from earlier FOIA requests that the SEC has the blue sheets. So the SEC knows what the short position is. Could it be that the SEC wants Nextbridge to provide more than 40 million shares? I don't know. It just sounds very suspicious here. It could be that the SEC is trying to protect the interests of shorts, market makers, and broker-dealers, right? How big is this short position? Is that why the S1 has been delayed? I suspect that may be the case, okay? Again, I do not know for sure, of course. I just see that. Please be advised we have considered the foreseeable harm standard. I think that there's a lot of potential foreseeable harm here. Let's just say that the amount of shares is gigantic and cannot be easily resolved. Would that cause a great deal of potential harm to shorts and market makers? Probably. Okay. Would that cause a lot of foreseeable harm to FINRA with the lawsuits that they have pending? Probably. Yeah. Because, you know, FINRA has, they've been caught in several lies already. And yes, this FOIA could actually catch FINRA in some more lies. We might have found that, let's just say, I don't know, there's 300 million shares that are short, in addition to the 165 million shares that were issued, meaning that there's about 320 million plus 165, about 480 million, 485 million shares out there, let's just say. Who knows? If that is the case, the SEC might have, the FINRA might have a lot of explaining to do. They might have to explain why they did the U3 halt. That could cause foreseeable harm to markets, and that might damage the integrity of FINRA. Possibly. They might lose that lawsuit against Roza Tawil. And if that happens, they might lose some additional lawsuits, right, against Richard Hoffman. And if that happens, you might have discovery. This is a big deal. It's a big deal. I strongly suggest you check out her video. Again, all that Bird Lady Roller Pigeons has asked for is to see what the comments there are, what the SEC comments are to an S1 filing. This is the filing to issue some more shares. And it could be that the comments reveal what the SEC has in mind. And if the SEC has in mind that they want Nextbridge Hydrocarbons to issue out a lot more shares and they want to hold that option open, then there's a lot of potential foreseeable harm there. Again, speculating. Again, I'm not a financial advisor, not financial advice. This information is, of course, intended for entertainment and educational purposes only, as it says on the bottom of this slide. But just consider, okay, what could happen, right? There's a lot that's unsaid here. There's the possibility that the SEC is knows a lot. We know that the SEC knows a lot because Gary Gensler has said he is 100% aware of the MMTLP Nexbridge hydrocarbon situation. He said this while he was in Congress, not while under oath. He said this informally to Anna Trades. Thank you, Anna Trades, for asking him that question. He didn't say anything else about the situation. He just said he's 100% aware of it. He's aware of he's aware that there's a significant problem. This problem has been going on for a significant amount of time, and the situation now I believe has gotten far worse. Right? I believe the situation is such that the SEC wanted to hold out to possibly force or coerce or encourage, let's just say encourage. The SEC may have wanted to encourage Nexbridge Hydrocarbons management to deliver to issue some additional shares to relieve the situation, to relieve the pressure of the situation for shorts, okay? It's possible, who knows? I don't know. I can't read anyone's mind. But if that's the case, then there's a lot of shares out there. Could be that there's 320 million shares. I strongly believe that there's somewhere in the range of 312, 320 million shares out there. That is the amount of shares shorts have to close. That's what I personally believe. I could be wrong, but I believe that to be the case based upon statistics that I showed earlier about Russ Race's data and whatnot, right? The SEC knows what the number is because they've seen the blue sheets. They know, okay? And if that's the case, they now may have to do a combination of open trades just to get the trades to settle, and then possibly, provide pressure to Nexbridge Hydrocarbons to release some additional shares for sale to shorts so that shorts can close their positions. Okay. Yeah, it's a mess. It's a royal mess. But it's not a mess that is created by Nexbridge Hydrocarbons. It's not a mess that's created by you or I, retail shareholders. This is a mess that is created by market makers and FINRA with the U3 halt. And FINRA was certainly 100% knowing about this. The short position was known. So this was a position created by shorts, market makers, and broker dealers. Okay, and they should have to pay the price to fix this problem, not retail investors like you or me. So just pay the price, close your short position, right? I suspect that short position is incredibly large based upon the reaction of this FOIA request. Again, this is a response that she got in just a few days, right? April 17th is when the FOIA request was received. And today is April 21st, 22nd, somewhere around there. In just a few days, they sent out a letter to Bird Lady to tell her, we're not going to give you the data because there's a lot of potential foreseeable harm in the future if we were to give you this information. Just saying that there's a lot of potential foreseeable harm in giving the information means that information is explosive. It's huge, right? This means that at this point, I don't need to see the information to know how bad it is. It's bad. There's a lot of shares. That's my interpretation, right? You may have a similar interpretation, but if someone says, I can't tell you the information because it might cause harm to the market, it might cause harm to my short buddies, to my market maker buddies, well, that's all I need to know. That means they're underwater. That means they're trapped. That means that they are screwed. And they want you and me to pay. They want you and me to pay for their mistakes. I don't think so. I don't think so. Hey, you're a big boy. Learn to live with the mess that you created and fix your problem. Okay, you created this problem, fix it. And I'm sure you can because, you took on the infinite risk of shorting. You should, you might have to just suffer to pay through that infinite risk. Again, not financial advice, not a financial advisor. This is just me talking about, what my thoughts are. It's intended, of course, for entertainment and educational purposes only. But that rejection letter says a lot. That rejection letter says a lot. So I think it's a big deal. Anyway, talk to you later. Today is April 21st or 2nd, I think, something like that. And again, not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This information is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. Goodbye.